previous class, we have discussed about three aspects of functions in C program. In this video, I'm going to discuss about type of functions. There are four type of functions: functions without argument and without return value, functions without argument and with return value, functions with argument and without return value, and the last one is functions with argument and with return value. Now I'm going to explain the first one, without argument and without return value. So in C programming, a function without argument and without return value is a function that performs specific task or a set of tasks and it doesn't take any input values. So it is also doesn't provide any output value back to the calling function. So let us use an example of adding two integers to illustrate this program. Here we have the program. So in this example, the add two integers is a function declared at the beginning with the prototype void. So the add two integers, this inform the compiler about the existence of the function and its return type. That is, the void indicate that the function doesn't return a value. In the main function, the function is the entry point of the program. That is, it calls the add two integers function. The add two integers function is defined later, doesn't take any argument as indicated by the empty parenthesis. So, doesn't have a return statement since it doesn't need to return any value to the main function. Then performs the task of taking two integers and as input from the user, calculating their sum and displaying the result. Okay, now I'm going to execute the program. The first integer is 4, 5. So the sum is 9. Okay. Functions without argument and without a return value are useful for organizing code and performing specific tasks that don't require input or output beyond their task scope. They are often used for tasks like displaying messages, gathering user input, and performing simple calculations. The next type of function in C program is function without argument and with return value. So, a function without argument and with return value is a type of function that doesn't take any input values when it is called, but it does provide a result back to the caller. This result is returned using the return statement within the function. Here we have the example of without argument and with return value that adds two integers. So in this example, the function add two integers doesn't take any argument, but it returns an integer value. It performs the task of taking two integer input from the user and adds them together. Then return the result of addition using the return statement. The main function calls add two integers to the, so here we can see the main function calls the add two integers to get the result and then displays it. Now I'm going to execute the program. First integer is 4. Second integer 3. So the sum of these two integers is 7. So this type of functions is useful when you want to perform some specific calculations or operation and obtain the result to use in your main program logic. The next type of function is function with argument and without return value. So in C programming, functions with argument and without return value are the functions that takes input values when they are called, but they do not provide any result back to the caller. These functions are used to perform actions that require specific data but do not need to return a value. Here we have the example, function with the argument and without return value that's adds two integers. So in this example, the function add to integer takes two integer arguments a and b representing the two integers that you want to add. The function adds these two integers together and displays the sum using the printf function. In the case of main function, the main function takes two integer input from the user, then calls the add two integers. Here we can see the main function calls the add two integer function, passing the ended integers as argument. So the add to integer function calculates calculate the sum and displays it. This type of function is useful when you want to encapsulate a specific action that requires input data but doesn't need to return a result. So now I'm going to execute this program. First integer is 5. Second integer is 4. So the sum is the 9, which is the result of adding these two integer values. The last type of function is functions with argument and with return value. So in C programming, functions with argument and return values allow to pass values to a function, perform some operations on those values, and then returns a result back to the caller. Here we have a simple example to illustrate the concept. So in this example, we have a function named as add, which takes two integer arguments num1 and num2 inside the add function. These arguments are used to calculate sum, which is stored in the result. Here is the result variable. So finally, the result is returned to the caller. So here, the result is returned to the caller. In the main function, we declare two integer variables a and b. We then call the add function with a and b as arguments. So here we can see there's a variable sum and the add function with the arguments a and b as an argument. And the return value sum, that is the sum, is stored in the sum variable. This sum is then printed in console. So here I'm going to execute this program. So we can see the output sum is 12. So functions with argument and return values in C allows to pass the data into a function and process it, and it return a result that can be used elsewhere in the program. So this is the concept of functions with argument and with return value.